All right, welcome to School Facilities and Operations. I'm Burke Jones. I guess I'm kind of the host of this podcast. And each week we bring you an interview with other facilities or operations directors or with partners that can teach us something that impacts our careers and our school districts directly. Um, so today, that's who we have. Have Jake Schmidtlein. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks, Burke. Excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. So I looked at you on LinkedIn, so it's kind of hard to like pin down like this is what you are. So give us a little bit about your background and kind of where you are today.
Yeah, so recently, as of now, I've started Three Nails Consulting. So I do a consulting company primarily around employee retention. And through that, we're going to impact recruiting as well as retention, um, ultimately driving lower cost of business and higher margins, hopefully, that we're not spending money recruiting, replacing, training. So that's where I've stumbled. How I got to that path was not very direct. So my formal background, I have a bachelor's degree in management and finance, and I got a master's degree. Started off in financial services for 14 years. Um, and then I have a really fun experience after that. I mean, I've run a racetrack, I've done construction. That's kind of the industry that I specialize in now. But through all of those, I built my first like employee training actually as a teller at the bank when I was 20 years old. We couldn't do homework, we couldn't do anything else fun. So I made a cheat sheet of how to do certain transactions for my reference more than anything. And when the new hire came on, I'm like, hey, by the way, I have this little cheat sheet that I made. And so that's been a piece of all of the jobs, all of the industries I've done. Is something deep inside of me is about the employee experience and how do we increase engagement? How do we create this place where people want to work? And so, as luck would have it, I've kind of stumbled into that. My previous company I was with, I was hired to do business development. The day before I started, they asked me to be chief people officer. And so I'm like, here we go, let's try this. And so that's kind of been the background. It's a lot of fun. I love seeing a lot of industries. And I think that's the one thing about, my path that I've been on is I've seen a lot of industries and I've seen a lot of industries quickly. So to like any recruiter friends out there, they see my resume and they're like, this guy bounces around, he's out. But what I've learned is there's common themes, and being able to see many industries in a short amount of time has actually been extremely helpful for having conversations with different businesses.
Well, and that's really what I wanted to talk about today with you is, I think all the school districts, at least that I know of, are just like everybody else. We're really struggling to hire um, in what I'll call like the classified. So it's all
Mhm.
the employees that aren't teachers. I mean, that's what I want to talk about. I know teachers are hard to hire right now too,
Sure.
but I got to keep the buildings going. So when they hire the teachers, we have someplace for them to be. So, I know we struggle to hire custodial help, food service help, bus drivers, grounds people. So I just wanted to come on and kind of brainstorm with you because, I mean, education is a unique thing, working in the education realm. And, what could we do maybe better to it, entice people to come to work and also make it kind of a cool place to keep working.
Yeah.
So,
No, I was actually having this conversation with my 10-year-old daughter the other day. And she's like, Dad, I think I know how to fix this problem that nobody has people. And I said, if you can really fix this people problem at 10, like you're gonna be a billionaire. Um,
right.
she's like, you just have to treat them right. And I was like, okay, now how do you promote this? But what you said is spot on. I mean, every company is struggling to find help, to find the right people. And I think we're starting to see companies settle for just a body, and especially like I said, as I'm doing work kind of in the construction space, how do we get more people interested in it? So there's a short-term approach we'll talk about, like what do we do today? How do we get people in here today? But then how do we come together? And this is really like for the school systems, how do they unify together to help educate that next generation of employees about really what it's like to work in the education system. Because I know a lot of teachers, I know a lot of faculty, and like you said, the non-faculty employees too, that have been in the system a long time. They have a ton of tenure. So there must be something exciting to keep people in that system. And so that's kind of how, we could break it up a little bit. What do we do today? But how do we build that momentum and tell that story long term as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what we need to be doing right now. Because I know talking to my buddies in this industry, I mean, someone's applying and we're doing everything we can do to hire them. And sometimes we're competing against, fast food businesses that pay more than we do.
Right.
Um, so yeah, let's look at that. Like, what should we be doing today? And then like, how can we begin to develop that story that keeps people here longer and that maybe they even then start telling that story to their friends and their family and everything else. So,
Well, let's get the pay thing out of the way to begin with, right? Because if everything was about pay, then I was thinking of accountants the other day. Like there's a lot of people that are accountants or do accounting type work for nonprofits that make way less money than if they were to go in the for-profit world. Okay,
right.
so it must not be about pay. Like not everything is always about pay. And I think that's the thing that we forget about is they're doing the same type of work. I mean, they're paying accounts receivable, sending out checks, whatever the accounting stuff is. I'm not a glorified accountant, but the work they do is the same. So there's got to be something else, because why would you do the same work for less money?
Right.
And so, there's one thing that I've been talking with companies about is, unfortunately, I think we commoditize employment with us. And so when employment with our organization, when we talk about it the same way as everybody else, when we only promote the same benefits that everybody else is promoting, and we don't tell the real value behind employment with our organization, the only thing that the employee has left to differentiate an employer is pay. So let's get that off the table first, that we see a lot of businesses, there's a huge variety of pay scales for similar type work. So while we can't always pay the highest wage, I'm here saying you don't have to, because and we see that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Um, because I believe that a lot of these people want to work a fair day's work, give a fair day's work for a fair day's wage. Doesn't have to be the most in the industry, to make that happen. But they also want to see a career path. I try to look at, what keeps one of our head custodians that's say been here for 10 or 15 years, like what's different about them than these people that come in and out, they're here for 3 months and they're out. Was the training different back then? What was it? And I honestly think that it really comes down to like more than what they were getting paid for. Like they
Yeah.
saw a mission here that was bigger, that even as a custodian or a food service person or a bus driver that they contributed to. And I've heard them say it. Like I've heard our head
Right.
custodian say, what's the best part of your job?" And they're like, "The kids." Like I'm the only person that doesn't discipline them or teach them in a building. Like we have a different relationship with those kids than the teachers and the principals. And I'm that kind of stuff really excites me when employees start talking like that.
Well, it does. And then I think that what you're saying is it's an alignment of values. The values of that individual that's been there for 10 or 15 years align with the school's values.
Right.
And I know I'm a millennial, so we get bad raps that we're all soft and fluffy. I'm not very soft and fluffy. But we've talked more about values and heard companies talking about alignment of values today, and we think it's this new thing. But really, I was studying an article from the Harvard Business Review, even back in the 70s, talking about how do we narrow the gap between employees and employers. And one of the things they highlighted is the alignment of values. that as the employees' values align with the company value, they come closer together. And so I don't feel that it's this new conversation, but I don't think most companies do a very good job of leading with their values to begin with. That's an afterthought once somebody comes in the door, maybe,
Right.
maybe.
Or it's like, here's our values, and they slide a sheet of paper across the table. But
Yeah.
there's nothing more to go. I mean, I can think of a few people we work with that I can kind of tell you their values. Like I've read them and I've seen them. But like other people, it's just here's our sheet of paper, you know?
Well, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of companies, the values look really good on the front wall when you walk in, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
we have core values. Here they are, but how do you live them? What does it look like? One of the companies I was working with, we just onboarded a new employee and they went over their company values and we were debriefing how it went. And the feedback was we didn't have any examples of what it looks like to live these values with our company.
Mm.
And so how do we add that? And how do we do that? Like mission and values for them is the very first thing that new hire does when they walk in the door. It's not paperwork. The very first thing when that person sits down is this company is talking about their mission and values. We'll get to the paperwork later, but this is what matters. And I applaud them for that.
Right. But they were missing that connecting piece, right?
That's right. And so that's the next step is what does this look like? When we say hard work is a core value for the organization, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to work 100 hours a week? Like, what does that look like?
Right.
Teamwork is a core value. What does that look like? And so, I think that's a big thing with these companies is what does it look like? Give me an example. Tell me, hey, this is the head custodian. They're living this value, and here's how you're going to see it. This is what you will see with your eyes.
That gives me a lot to think about.
I mean,
My mind's racing right now.
when you started, how soon did you learn about the mission and core values?
I mean, pretty quick, yeah. Pretty
How,
quick.
and how often do you reinforce it? And do you talk about it? And do you highlight and recognize employees for it? Or is it, here's what they are, they're important to us, but we don't connect the dots?
Yeah. I would say as a district, we do connect that back quite frequently with existing employees. I think when you're bringing new people in and explaining them, I love that idea of like, here's an example of what that looks like
Mhm.
and what you'll see in the district. I think that could be really powerful for all of the people that we bring in through my department for sure.
I was looking at some ads. I love looking at like recruiting ads just to see what they put out there. Like, what's your first thing you're telling a prospective employee about your organization? And so I was looking up solid recruiters, and one of them was an aerospace company. And it said, do you want to find the next person to go to the moon? Like, that's what they led with. Versus another company is like, be part of a team to help build recruiting in the talent pipeline. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to be a recruiter. They know that.
Right.
But if I'm looking for a place to work, suddenly you have my attention. Like, do you want to find the next person to walk on the moon? Okay, that sounds kind of interesting. Like, I want to at least learn more, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the education system, you know, you have such a rich potential. Like, you are impacting the future generation of this country in every position.
Right.
We hear the famous quote about the custodian, right, at NASA that ran into the president. He's like, yeah, I helped put a person on the moon. Like, he's had such ownership in what he did and
Right.
felt so connected with the organization that as his role as a custodian, he was still part of that team that landed on the moon. And so are we leading with that? Are we talking about that in the recruiting process, in the job postings? Like, the amount of impact these people get to have on our young children is massive.
It is.
And I would guess if I looked at the school system's job postings, it probably doesn't lead with that.
Right. We have a 8-hour night custodial position. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're exactly right. I remember I had a friend that was looking for a job and he came across one from Chick-fil-A And, I mean, they led with, we are here to manage the resources God has provided us, to impact and make special times for families or something like that. I can't remember exactly
Right.
what it was, but it was interesting because just thinking about that, pick the next astronaut. Well, Chick-fil-A did the same thing. They led with what they believed, and then the job description kind of went on to explain that. So,
And if anybody's been through Chick-fil-A, you see that they live it. And I think that if anybody's spent a fair amount of time around the education system, they lead with that too. But we get caught up in the noise, and we talk about the retirement, and we talk about benefits, and we talk about time off, but so does everybody else. And when I spoke earlier about commoditizing, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if everybody's saying the same thing, then you just become a number. And
right,
so how do we really embrace what we're doing? Now, with that being said, we still have to get applicants. We still have to get eyes. And I think the most underutilized thing right now is social media for recruiting.
right.
Absolutely. And real genuine social media. I saw this construction company in Tennessee. And if anybody's been around Nashville, like, there's massive construction growth going on. There's a labor shortage. And this company posted a short little video on Instagram, and they had a desk set up on a job site, and a dozer came by and ran over the desk. And it said, office jobs aren't for everyone. That was it.
That's awesome.
But that's what they're doing to separate themselves from their competition. Because
Right.
a person seeing that goes, that's not your typical post. That's not your typical online. They caught attention. Whether that means they're a great fit for you as an employee, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying anything about that, but we're fighting for attention.
Yeah,
And
we
that's,
really are. I know yeah, I mean, we put all of our jobs on our own job board, but we've really started going out more with Facebook and different avenues just to get the job post out there, but it's not in that fashion.
yeah, and that's where the thing, we all love behind the scenes. You know, look at TV shows, look at concerts, whatever it might be. Like, people will pay more to find the behind the scenes, like what really goes on.
Right.
It's curiosity. And so if we can find a way to utilize social media to help share a little bit behind the scenes. My kids love zoos, and so we watched, like, on Animal Planet or whatever, all these, like, the Bronx Zoo and the aquarium in Atlanta, like, because you get to go behind the scenes and see what really goes on in those organizations.
Right.
And we could do the same thing with our business, seeing some of those testimonies from the people that work there. And I know, like, with education, there is some fine lines with social media and kids, and it's not easy. I
Right.
recognize that, but there's still a story to be told, and there's
Oh,
attention to be grabbed. And what are we doing with it?
right. Now that's an interesting thought process because yeah, I don't see any schools doing any videos or here's a custodian talking about how they impact this building every night and how that translates into keeping kids healthy and
Yeah,
in school. Um, that could be really interesting to see what that does.
yeah.
Um,
And so I think that's the short term, is we have to recognize we're fighting for attention. We have to recognize that it's not always about money. But if we're not talking about our values, if we're not talking about our mission, if we're not talking about impact, then it becomes money. And so those are a lot of the pieces in that short term. Now, long term, I spent a fair amount of time in sales and marketing in my professional career, and we're always studying net promoter score, which net promoter score is how likely are you to recommend us a product or a service. And so a lot of businesses, that's kind of the golden rule, the benchmark, is studying their net promoter score of how likely are you to recommend us. And they use that to drive their business, right? Making legitimate business decisions from it. I wonder what would happen if we created a net promoter score for employment with our organization. How likely are you, Burke, to recommend employment with the Derby school system?
right.
And
That would
that
be
to me is,
a question to find out.
I think so, because when you have a good experience with something, we want to tell it. You know, if you
Right.
go to a restaurant for the first time and you have a good experience, you're going to tell people about it. You go to a gym, you have a great experience. Like anytime we have that kind of good first experience, we're going to talk about it. Or the flip side is, you know, you're at the local bar on a Friday night, everybody just got done with work, and it's like, oh my gosh, I had a week. Like, I hate this job. Like, do you have detractors on staff?
Right.
You know, and so what are we doing for our existing employees to make them promoters of our company, make them promoters of our business? And how do we implement, whether it's the benefits, the training, the systems, the resources, to increase employee engagement within our organization, to move more of them to be that promoter, that when they're sitting there on that Friday night and somebody's complaining, they go, man, you should come work with us. This place is amazing. Let me tell
Right.
you why.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely the solution. It's just getting there.
It's definitely the long-term play.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely a long-term play of getting, I mean, it's going to take time, years, to get those employees to tell the story. But if they don't understand the importance of it, if we're not talking about it, they
Right.
don't know.
Right. That
They
is
don't know.
true. They don't know because they've never sat on this side of the table wondering where the people are going
Right.
to come from.
Yeah.
Yep. So how do you think companies, and this is for school districts too, is like, how do you think we're going to eventually deal with all of the warm bodies that people are hiring? Like, will it just work itself out in attrition? I mean, there's a certain portion of those people that are going to be rock stars,
Yeah.
you know? So I think it'll be interesting to see as the market tightens, are people going to, I'm sure they'll be the first ones cut or whatever, but talking about businesses outside of school districts.
Yeah. I think that, you know, we've seen history repeats itself. Everything comes back to kind of ground zero eventually.
Right.
But we're in way different times than we've ever been. Like everybody knows that. Um, there's more and more companies out there looking for help. This is just such a massive issue. I don't know that it will reset like it has in the past. Um, I think that core businesses are going to have an opportunity to say, hey, we're here. And as people continue to deal with all of this uncertainty and influx in the world, I think that's a great story, especially for a school system, is we offer you some stability. We're
Right.
going to offer you some peace of mind that you're not getting in the world. I mean, look, Twitter just laid off how many employees, you know,
Yeah.
boom, overnight, you know, and so at some point, people are going to want some stability. And so I think if you can offer that, you can talk about, again, back to this recruiting thing, like, are we talking and using those words? Like, are you looking for some stability in life? Are you looking for, you know, a little less chaos or uncertainty?
Right.
We can provide that. Now, custodian in lunchroom, there's chaos. I've been there. I volunteered at the kids' school last week. But, you know, I think in a general sense, and you have to have some short-term initiatives going on right now just to cover the gaps. We have businesses to run, you have schools to maintain, like, and so I was joking, there was one company that was doing scheduling, and so I was helping them with their scheduling software, and they created an employee that was somebody, and they created another employee that was called anybody, because as they're doing their work, like, they don't have enough employees for all the work that they need to do. And so, like, that's their trigger. It's like, for this particular job, as a construction company, for this particular job, we just need anybody. Like, I need a body.
Right.
Anybody will do. Like, who's available? Um, this particular job, I need at least these skill sets. I need somebody. Like, it just can't be anybody. But that's, I mean, they're getting creative, and just so as they're scheduling and forecasting out work, it's like, here's our gaps. Who do we fill them with? Somebody or anybody, you
Yeah,
know?
that's good.
Uh,
That's funny.
So we'll see that. I do think that there is just this, and maybe it's because I'm close to construction industry that I'm hearing it, but I feel like there's a lot more conversations being had about non-college degree work and the types of careers that exist within them, the type of financial freedom that can be found in it, the type of life that you can create, like going into this line that hasn't been done before. You know, both of my daughters want to be teachers. And so we were looking at, Dave Ramsey had the list of the top 5 professions that deliver the most millionaires. And teachers is on that list.
Really?
And we know it's not because of the money they made, but it's because of the discipline and everything else that goes along with it. But the point being, it's not about the salary. And it's what you do with it. But we're seeing, again, just even that in conversations, like, you want to be a millionaire? Teachers can be that.
Right.
Like, anybody can be it. You don't have to have a 4-year degree. And I kind of,
the group you're running with is starting to talk about, have those conversations, because there's a district nearby here in Kansas, and they have a signing day for people that are going to trade schools, just like they have a signing day for their athletes or for very prestigious colleges or whatever, because I think people are beginning to understand that there's a lot of ways to have a very good lifestyle, especially when you like what you're doing, and then you can be well paid to do a lot of these trades with no debt.
yeah,
You know?
no, I worked for a construction dealer and we recruited a lot of technicians, and we did technician signing days. You know, we made
Yeah.
a big deal of it because it's important. But the other conversation that's happening is people are starting to talk more about, like, living with purpose and doing something that matters and makes a difference. And that bodes really well for the school system.
Oh yeah.
As you mentioned, there's a purpose. There is such a greater purpose that all of these roles provide. And the more that we talk about that as a society, I think it's going to open some eyes of, like, well, I want to have a purposeful job. I want to have a purpose-filled life. How can I do that? I love kids. I want to help make a difference. Oh, I never thought about working in a school. I never thought about the impact I could have because nobody was talking about it.
Right.
So as those start to align, I'm hopeful for a lot of these jobs that we continue that conversation and people start thinking about what they're going to do next, filled with a purpose-filled life.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, you talk about purpose. I think a big, huge, unexpected joy that I've had in this position after 3 years is I never expected the purpose to come through as important as it does for me. Like, I
Yeah.
love walking through schools and seeing these kids in heated, air conditioned, clean facilities that we provide, but it's so fun
Yeah.
to see them in the buildings that we maintain, and see how we can directly impact that learning.
When I
Um,
think even, I think of facilities like the work that goes on over summer, maybe it's installing new technology, new whatever, and then to get to see how it's impacting the learning for the kids, or that new playground equipment or whatever it might be. It's like, man, that's really cool
yeah,
to see that. So when it comes to 4-year degrees, I joke, I have my 4-year degrees, I have a master's, but I also have my Class A CDL. And I hang on to it because that Class A CDL is worth so much more money tomorrow than my master's degree. If I have to provide for my family, if I have to, I need to make money tomorrow, having a master's degree, so what? Having a
right.
CDL? Hey, let's talk. You
Yeah,
can drive a truck. And so there's a reason why I keep it. And there's a reason why I keep driving big trucks is I want to provide for my family. That's my job. That's my mission in life, is to provide for my family. And so I'm keeping my resources available. How can I do that? And I think trade school, technical school, like learning that in addition, and maybe do it in addition to something else. But
Well, since you have that
that's
CDL, when you want to come drive a school bus, we have a spot for you, Jake.
okay.
Come on down.
Absolutely. I rode on a school bus last week. I got one of the things that's been really cool for me is, I spent so much time in the corporate world that now working for myself, I can do things for my kids. And so I was volunteered at the school last week, and we went on a field trip, and I hadn't been inside a school bus forever.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, man, God bless these drivers that do this every day, because it's a little rowdy. It was
It's
a little
rowdy.
bit noisy.
Yeah. We have a school bus try it out days every year. So we set up in a parking lot. And if you think you might want to be a school bus driver,
Mhm.
you can come. We'll let you drive around the parking lot with one of our drivers sitting next to you. And I've done it every year since I've been here, but that's a big vehicle. I'll just say,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to just take that thing and go out and drive a route because without some additional training, because
Now, do
it
you load it full of kids for that tryout? Because I just don't feel like that's an accurate depiction of the job if it's empty.
yeah, I agree. No, there's no kids on there. There's no noise, but yeah, it's pretty
Maybe do a
cool.
recording of it. But do they do rodeo days for like school bus drivers?
Yeah, in fact, our drivers this year won the like 6 foot tall state trophy
That's
um,
awesome.
for our district. So yeah, we have a group that does that every year, and they practice a whole bunch, and um, which
See,
I
those
fully support. That's a lot of fun and makes them really good drivers.
and those are the things that I think we talked about social media is highlighting like the fun of this and that they're practicing, and they again that pride that they have going through these school bus rodeos. And
Right.
and there's just, I think the thing is we have to get creative. We have to involve a lot of the team. You mentioned the people that are doing the work might not understand what it's like on the other end of the spectrum, finding people to do the work. Like, let's include them in the conversation.
Right.
The more ideas, the better. And sometimes you just have to get creative, like running over a desk with a dozer, to generate a little bit of attention once in a while.
Yeah. Well, Jake, I think we've covered a lot of great information. I know my mind's spinning on what we can start working on around here. So I always wrap up every interview with a rapid fire questions. So
Okay,
here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
How would your parents describe what you do?
They have no idea. I literally was with my mom last week, and she's like, "So what do you do exactly?" Um, no, she has no clue. And so yeah, we're working on educating them on what I do.
Sounds good. So do you use a digital planner or paper?
Digital,
Paper or digital?
always digital. I'm
Yeah.
on the go too much, and I'm
Yeah.
lazy. I joke with people, I'm like super lazy. And if I can hit a button and say, "Hey Siri, add this event to my calendar," and it takes me, oh, now she's going to do it. I shouldn't have said that real word. Um, and I can do that, and I don't have like boom, boom. So
Yeah.
definitely digital.
I like digital. So what time of day do you get your best work done?
Usually it's between like 5:30 and 7 in the morning. So
Yep.
I try to get up early, spend some time in quiet, and then my best thinking is usually first thing in the morning or in the middle of the night when I can't sleep.
There you go. Well, hopefully you don't have that happen very often.
Not too much, not too much.
Jake, man, I really appreciate you being with us today. Um, it was some good conversation. And how could people get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, so probably LinkedIn's the easiest way. Just Jacob Schmidtlein on LinkedIn. You can see, as you mentioned, all the different things I'm involved with or companies I'm doing. But that would be the best. Or I keep my Facebook, my Instagram, that's like for me personally. So LinkedIn for the business side.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again, Jake. Really appreciate having you here today. And I know I think everybody will get a lot out of what we've talked about.
No, thank you. I look forward to looking for your job postings and following you on social to see what you guys do with it.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Jake. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Burke.